change out your transmission fluid and filter. It's going to be a less messy job if you have one of these things to go over your drain. However, it's not impossible if you don't. It just, like I said, it's going to make it less messy because transmission fluid typically does not have a drain plug unless you've installed one, or if you have a much older vehicle, because they decided at some point that they wanted to call it lifetime fluid and let you buy a new transmission instead of changing fluid. So the transmission pan is surprisingly far forward on this vehicle. It's approximately behind here. So this is your transmission pan. Conveniently, hot exhaust pipes and catalytic converters are wrapped around it, so if you had to drive your vehicle to do the service, you're going to want to let it cool as long as possible to try to avoid getting burned. Typically what I do is remove one side's bolts. For example, I'll probably remove the front side, and then I'll start loosening around, and usually fluid will start running out. Sometimes once you loosen the first bolt, sometimes it takes a while, but you want to leave the rear bolts in and let as much fluid drip out as possible. You can, of course, install a drain plug where they used to have one, which would be right there, it looks like. That just makes it a little less messy job because you can drain from there first and then start unbolting. But anyway, like I said, it's usually a messy job. It's not a fun job, but it's in my opinion, a very necessary job. I do not believe in this whole lifetime fluid crap. I think you need to change your transmission fluid regularly. In fact, more often than even what the schedules show on typical vehicles, because I do believe that it makes them last a whole lot longer. So I'll figure out what size bolts those are. They look like they're probably around 10 millimeter. And you can see with several of the bolts removed, it is now dripping out, which is why, like I said, it's nice to have that wide pan to catch it, because it starts dripping out all sorts of weird places and starts trickling down and creating new drip points and so forth. Alright, I'm not going to be able to film this while I'm doing it, but basically I'm going to remove the rearward bolt and kind of hold the pan, try to keep it from spilling, and try to wiggle it around all the pipes and lower it out of there. And when I do, fluid will probably come out from the transmission itself. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to be able to show you me doing it. Why I always say engineers should have to consult with mechanics before designing anything, because I'm guessing you may have to drop the exhaust or something. I'm fixing to go read up and see, but that pan does not just slide out. The exhaust pipe is in the way, and if they move the exhaust pipe maybe a ½ inch to an inch, then you would have no problems with clearance at all, but they didn't, so I'm going to see if there's some trick to sliding it out of there. I looked in the online shop manual and they say remove the catalytic converter. So chalk up another one to stupid engineering. Routine maintenance includes changing your transmission fluid and filter. You should not, I repeat, not have to remove your catalytic converter to be able to do routine maintenance. So I'll be back tomorrow in the daytime when I can see. It looks like it's 3 nuts or bolts. Maybe I'll be lucky and it will lower down enough to give me enough clearance just to slide it out of there, because I really don't feel like removing the cat back exhaust just to change out the dang transmission fluid. Alright, the design of this demonstrates one of two things. Either the engineers literally have no clue what a catalytic converter is, what an O2 sensor is, what a transmission is. I mean, literally no clue whatsoever what any of it is or does or why things need to be a certain way. Because if they did, they would never design having the exhaust run in by the transmission, because you're just overheating that fluid. But more so, I think you can see, it looks like that pan should come off, right? And even when I removed the last two, I put 2 bolts back in just to hold it, because, you know, basically every time I move it, fluid would spill out. But it does not clear that pipe. So the one shop manual says to remove your cats. Well, I thought if I unbolted completely this cat here, which requires you to remove the O2 sensor because it's in the way of the bolt. And again, that's what I'm saying. The level of stupidity there, when you could have the 3 bolts accessible and have the O2 sensor not in the way, that would be a miracle. But they didn't do that, so you have to, and there's no room to get in there to do the O2 sensor. You see it's just hanging here now. But I mean, I literally had to get in there with just a regular box wrench and turn it like a 1/16 of a turn at a time until I could get it spinning with my fingers. But all 3 bolts, all 3 nuts are out of the cat, and the little retaining ring is down, but the cat has not moved even a millimeter, which means that this pipe has not moved a millimeter. And I swear, I think it needs about a 1/4 inch to get that pan off. That's it. But again, if the engineers had any clue what they were doing, they could have moved that pipe back closer to that cross member, and then you'd have no problem whatsoever getting that pan out. Or if the engineers did know what they were doing, then this is just a level of evil that you can't really comprehend, other than they probably are thinking, you won't change your transmission fluid, therefore you'll have to buy a new truck or at least a new transmission. If you're wondering, it's probably a 22 millimeter to get the O2 sensor off, but I only have a 7/8, which is really close. Got that off as 15 millimeter nuts that were holding on the cat. And if they're rusty, you should spray them with penetrating oil, which you can see I did my best to do, but it gets all over because they don't really have a good way for you to reach them and so forth. Like I said, it's just a horrible, horrible design. Alright, we're back with genius Chevy engineering. So I decided I would go ahead and just pull the cats so I could get this stupid transmission filter changed. And those 2 are easy to get to. And on this side, they actually did not put the O2 sensor in the way. So theoretically, you could get to that 3rd bolt up there. However, you cannot put a shallow socket on it because it's, you know, too deep down because of the bolt sticking out, and you can't put a deep socket on it because the cat here is in the way if you have a deep socket on there. Even with a swivel attachment, even with a wobble extension, you can't seat it on the nut and turn it. So you can strip it, you can get it partly on and strip it, but you can't seat it on there and turn it. So basically you have to remove the cat to remove the cat, which obviously I'm not going to cut the cat out. But again, stupid, 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 stupid engineering. There's absolutely no reason for this. There's no way to get a box wrench on it that I can tell. And even if you could, I don't think you could get enough torque, because those things are seriously torqued down. Like my impact wrench wouldn't even turn them. I had to turn them with a breaker bar first and then finish them off with the impact. But I mean, there's just no excuse for being this stupid. Alright, with more cuss words than anyone should have to endure, I did get it down. And yeah, the trick, if you want to call it that, is you have to unbolt the catalytic converter from both sides. The driver's side catalytic converter has the issue of the one nut is just in a horrible place. I was actually, if you can see, I was actually able to remove it with that. So I had a really hardcore swivel on the end, a not quite shallow socket. The other two on the driver's side came right off with just a normal deep 15 socket. And then of course the passenger side, I had to remove the O2 sensor to get to the nuts, but then they were all able to just come off with impact. So you can see this fluid is pretty dark. I'm going to clean this pan up. Looks like the gasket came off intact, so hopefully there's not anything that needs to happen as far as scraping, but I will clean the surfaces. There's a magnet in here, I'll clean that up too, and we'll pull that filter, which hopefully you can see there. It should just pull straight off, and then when it does, more fluid will pour down, so still keeping the drain there. Filter just pulls straight down. You'll notice on there is no gasket. I can't find one of these stuck up in the transmission. Went to install it, and guess what? It's not the right filter. I think you can tell pretty obviously when you look at them. It's not even close. There's not even a way to wrestle this in there to make it where it'll fit. Alright, pick up the magnet, clean it thoroughly. Basically I just wipe it down with shop towels and clean out the pan. Yes, this is a reusable gasket, so that's great. And I went to O'Reilly and they had one in stock, $60. And yeah, it does have a washer, O-ring, whatever you want to call it, that goes with it. So I'm going to climb back under the truck and see if basically if the old one is really actually stuck in there, since when I was checking before I had the wrong filter. So this very possibly could be the O-ring stuck in there. So I'm going to check that. Alright, we're going to lay this in here and try to start by finger tight at least a couple bolts just to hold it up here. Alright, you get the idea. I'm going to put them all in by hand just so that they're holding it up there. Torque is 97 inch-pounds, which is approximately 8 foot-pounds. Probably a specific order, but as long as you go basically from end to end, trying to even out your pressure, you should be fine. There we go. Let's go back and forth, side to side. This one has 18, so after I'm done, I'm going to go probably all the way around just to make sure I didn't miss any. Alright, at this point I'm just putting on the cat's back, basically. So just pushing them on the flange and tightening those down. Interestingly, I can't find the torque spec on these. So you see I have anti-seize on them, which the only thing it says to do, which that's kind of common sense since these tend to rust. So I'm going to snug them up pretty snug. The O2 sensor says 31 foot-pounds. I have no way to torque that to spec, I don't think. So again, that'll just have to be snugged up. The refill process is pretty straightforward. Just going to pour it right down where the dipstick goes. I have drained out approximately 6 quarts. So that's kind of the amount that we're going to expect to pour back in. However, the process isn't that straightforward. it's a good guideline, but you don't want to just say, oh, I got out 5 quarts, so I'm going to put 5 quarts in. What they recommend is start with 4 quarts, which is 1 gallon, pour that in, and then start it and see kind of where you're at. It is filled properly when it is warm. You've run it through all the gears, and then with the engine running in park, you check the dipstick, and you want to, in between the little areas where it says that it needs to be, and I'm sure you can't read the letters on there, but anyway, so that's what I'm going to do. Start with 4 quarts, pour it right in here. And yes, I'm using the Maxlife, which is basically the equivalent of the Dexron VI. Some would argue it's better. In any event, this fluid is compatible with so many different fluids that it's a nice option to have, as you can't always find the dealer specific fluid unless you want to pay top dollar. And unlike the fluid that came out, which was brown, blackish, this is a nice red, pinkish red color. Okay, there's our gallon. And what I will do is pour the old fluid into here and see, you know, when this is full, how much I have left in the drain pan, and that'll kind of give me, like I said, a ballpark idea. It should be around 6 quarts that it needs, but obviously the only way to know for sure is to do the dipstick method.